Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the CEO Next Door. We are in season 3, and we have yet again another incredible guest who we are chatting with this afternoon. Our guest today, Ryan Rusnak, CTO of Airspace. We're really glad to have you, Ryan. Let's just dive right in. Would love to hear more about who you are and what Airspace is.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. My name is Ryan Rusnak. I'm the CTO of Airspace. And Airspace is a time-critical freight forwarder. We're based out of Carlsbad, California. And what time-critical is, you can think of it as the most precious things that are moving on planet Earth. These are organs for transplants, prototype vaccines, other vaccines, tissue for research, biopsies, parts for downed aircraft, downed manufacturing lines. If it has to be there as fast as possible, where someone might die on the other end, someone might actually lose their life or have injury, or someone's losing money, they use us. So as CTO, like, we write algorithms that optimize that path and move things, all over the planet as fast as possible to minimize the impact on maybe the patient or the business.
Interesting. Ryan, when did this business start? And you are a co-founder, correct?
I'm the co-founder, CTO and co-founder. So that was about 8 years ago, believe it or not. In 2015, I met Nick, who's the CEO. Awesome guy. If you guys like me, you should definitely interview him. In 2015, we went over the business problem and talked about it. And we decided that we need to write a prototype, see if we could actually revolutionize a pretty broken industry. And about 6 months later, we decided, hey, we have something here. Let's launch it. And that was in January 2016.
And you're based out of San Diego?
We are, yep.
And how big's the team, and where are you guys all stationed remotely or all in San Diego?
So we're right around 300, and wow. The biggest crew is in San Diego. But like I said, we got a lot of remote people. Our VP of engineering is in Chicago. We have another office in Texas. We have another office in Amsterdam, remote people in Europe, remote people all over the US. So we've got pretty much a hybrid culture.
Very cool. Well, Ryan, we're excited to hear how you eventually got to the idea of Airspace, but generally on the CEO Next Door, Mike and I like to take it back a little bit. We like to hear about the earliest entrepreneurial ventures of our co-founder guests. So would love to hear about your upbringing, where you grew up, and any early work that really gave you the entrepreneurial itch.
Yeah, that's a great question. Take it way back. I guess pretty early on, of course, like every other kid, I grew up in rural Virginia. So like every other kid, I was like mowing lawns. So that was my first exposure to, if you do something, people might give you money if you're doing something they don't want to do, which is great. Then I met a guy who, my friend had this great job where he would wake up at like 3 a.m. and he would cook kettle corn in this guy's garage till like 5, and then he would go remodel houses. So this is a guy who's older than me. He ended up going to the army. So I took that job over, and this guy was running 2 businesses, and one was selling popcorn online and the other one was remodeling homes. And I got exposed to the pros and cons of all of those things, the frustrations. I learned that you need to be very careful how you're spending your time, that not all things pay out equally. And that was interesting. So I was kind of young there. And then I just, college, grad school, et cetera, software, worked in the government. That is where I learned that you need to care about what you're doing. And that really matters. The government was the only place I've ever seen that had, a lot of people had these countdown calendars. You ever seen those?
Mm-hmm. Of when they're done with the job. Is that what you're talking about?
It's like a countdown
retirement date?
To a retirement date. And I was shocked. I was like, what are these things? And they're like, oh, it's a countdown calendar retirement. And I was like, man, there's only one other place in the world that has countdown calendars. Any guesses what that is?
No.
It's prison.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That makes sense.
Right. And I was like, this is crazy. I can't live my life like this. It was kind of then I went out, grad school and did consulting, which was, I learned a lot of things that I didn't like to do. And then soon after that, I met Nick. But I had lots of other side things where I made this robot. I ended up in Popular Science and was on the Discovery Channel, and that paid for my honeymoon. I was on this Christmas campaign ad for Best Buy. And it was then I realized that, like, if you do something, just share it. because the world is huge and just
Mhm.
people want to pick it up. Other people get as excited about it as you or more. Yeah, that was kind of where I learned that
Tell,
little lesson.
tell us more about this robot. That sounds amazing.
Yeah, the robot was that you probably saw it. It was pretty viral. It was this iPhone. You could choose what beer you wanted, and it would just kind of pivot in the room, and it would vend what beer you wanted into an air cannon, and it would shoot it across the room to you.
Come on.
So I'm not even kidding that like I've got this, my 15 minutes of fame consisted of 2 words where on the Best Buy Christmas commercial, they are rehearsing these fake lines, and I shoot a beer, I catch it, and I look at the camera and I say, "Beverage, anyone?" And that's my 15 minutes.
Wow. So
So talk us through where did you get the idea? How did you come up with this? B, what was the process like building it? And C, how did you get tied into Best Buy with this?
I love how we're talking about this and not Airspace.
Yeah.
but yeah,
more
I'll give you
interesting.
the
No,
background.
I'm kidding.
Yeah. So I got the idea for this because I was just, reading these articles, and there was this microcontroller that got invented. It was called an IO bridge. It's gone now. And it was like a really early internet controlled microcontroller. And usually microcontrollers just kind of operate on board. To get that connected to the internet is just so hard. So this is a long time ago. So this guy made it really easy to connect to the internet. I bought one. I was trying to, push the envelope of this thing, and I realized you could like trigger something from kind of anywhere and make something happen. Blink a light, whatever. And like, if you can blink a light, then you can trigger a switch. So I was like, I've got this old college mini fridge. I'm gonna hack it up and see if I can make a vending machine. And then I realized that was so boring, because like you could just hit a button on your phone when you look in the fridge and it would roll out. But you could also hit it from the opposite side of the planet and it would roll out. That's cool. I was like, well, we need to make this more exciting. And I was talking to a buddy of mine. He was like, dude, we should make an air cannon and it should shoot you the beer. And I was like, yeah, right. That's a lot more exciting. And we did. And there's hilarious moments where we like disintegrated beers because we didn't know how much pressure to use. And then I put it on the internet, and like I was ready to throw this thing away because like every project, especially hardware projects, there are some stumbling blocks, right? I smashed a lamp. I'm surprised I didn't hurt my wife, who was my girlfriend at the time, amazingly. And I just put a video online, and it blew up. And it was years later. Best Buy called me, and they're like, "Hey, we want to talk about this thing on our it was like a maker, commercial." And yeah, I got selected, which is pretty crazy. But before that, like I said, I got in Popular Science, which was like the dream of mine. That was amazing.
Were you manufacturing this robot, or was just your one prototype?
I just wanted to see if I could do it, just one prototype. And I mean, this thing was dangerous, very dangerous.
Sounds like it. It sounds like a gun.
Yeah, it was pretty much like a potato gun on steroids that was hooked up to the internet.
That someone could easily gain access to and just start firing beers at some unsuspecting couch potato.
Yeah, the world's a big place. So I had some people comment on YouTube like, I'm gonna hack your fridge and shoot beers at you. And I was like, dude, I'm just gonna unplug my fridge.
Did you ever consider commercialization, or were you like, no, not a
No,
chance.
like I
This
said,
is
it
gonna
was
be a headache.
super dangerous.
Yeah.
So I never really wanted to do that. But the cool thing that came about it is I was like on these IO Bridge forums trying to make this thing work, and I was talking to all these people, and then the CEO reaches out, and he's like, dude, can I take you to dinner? And I was like, yeah. And it turned out he was like not far away. I was in Virginia, he was in Pittsburgh, and he took me to dinner with a couple of his buddies. All the people I was talking to were like him and his wife. He was like trying to make the company kind of look and feel bigger. And we just had this amazing interaction, and we're still friends. His name's Hans Charler. The guy's a genius. And we're, like I said, we're still buddies. And the guys he brought to dinner we're still friends of mine. They helped me build another one for the Science Channel on this reality show called Junkies. And so somewhere on the internet is me doing terrible reality TV acting.
Wow.
And it was fun.
Interesting.
That's crazy.
So did you ever, from your either your stint on reality TV or through Best Buy, did you make a slight profit off of it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it pretty much paid for my honeymoon. So It was funny. I got all these letters from the Screen Actors Guild about all my rights as an actor, which was hilarious. Yeah, my mom was actually, the shtick was like, your parents give you this gift from Best Buy and you did something amazing with it. That was kind of the shtick. And my mom, the way the camera was zooming out, she had a couple more lines and she was on TV longer. So she actually made more money than I did.
I'm sure she never reminds you of that.
Yeah. She deserves it. She certainly does.
So let's go back to the kettle corn. I'm curious because that's kind of where you got your start. You said this individual was selling it online.
Yeah, and it was really early.
Yeah.
He also was doing it at fairs. So I would like, go to fairs and like literally like cook popcorn over this hot air balloon flame. I was like 16.
Okay. So you mentioned that you may have learned that some things fairly laborious, maybe not as big of a payoff. Would that fall into that category?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, the job paid great and it was all on the table, which is awesome. But yeah, it was hard. I think, yeah, I wasn't passionate about it. Right now, if I'm anything, I'm passionate about what I do. I just, I learned that way that there were like a lot of ways you could make money, I think, and whether that's making popcorn and selling it at a fair or on the internet, remodeling houses, like there's just a lot of ways to do it.
So this was during high school, and how long did these roles last?
It was just summers. I think I did 2 summers.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you still stay in touch with the popcorn guy?
No, I wish I should. Yeah, his name was Troy. He was a great guy. He actually was, he was like police officer of the year. Met
wow.
Bill Clinton and everything. He was a really good dude. But so this was like his retirement job, but I hadn't seen him in a very, very long time. Good guy though.
Thinking back at things you learned from your lawn mowing jobs to your popcorn business and remodeling houses, what would you say you learned that you took on with you to the next roles?
I would say it's all about what you're capable of doing. It's all about skill. And that seems obvious to an adult, but to a kid, I don't think that's super obvious, right? That like your pay is commensurate with the number of people that know how to do what you know how to do. And there's not as many people that know how to do what you know how to do. And there's that crossover with need, then, the pay goes up, right? So a lot of people can cut the grass. That doesn't pay that well. Sure. But I think, that was one of the things that kind of stuck with me.
Interesting. So as you moved on from that into college, did you go to school for engineering based on your robot story, or are you just kind of a tinkerer?
I joke that I had the worst college advisors ever. And I went to Virginia Tech. I love Virginia Tech. It was a great place to grow up. I needed to grow up from 18 to 22. But I worked in this place called the New Media Consortium. Loved it. And I was like making websites for college professors and they might be an expert in philosophy and they want to put their content online. They don't know how to do it. This is like way pre-WordPress. So I would like make websites for them. And I thought that was awesome. And I loved it. And I literally thought that was a hobby. And I was like, no one's going to pay me to do that. That's just the things I like to do. And so my major was, I was really, really shy. So, but I liked people. And that made me want to do psychology. My parents wanted me to do business. I showed up the first day and they were teaching everyone how to use Excel. I was like, this is stupid. Everyone knows how to use Excel. So I dropped that immediately. I went to biology and I realized I didn't want to be a doctor because I did one lab and I was cutting on animals. And I was like, this sucks. I don't want to do that. Then I went to psychology. And I was like, oh, this is fascinating. It's interesting. You're learning about, it's funny. It's not a hard science, but it's literally something we don't understand. And then I graduated and I realized that the only thing people wanted to pay me for was to make software. And I was like, okay, well, let's get really serious about this. I applied to Carnegie Mellon and got in and I learned how to write software at scale, software that people like to use and want to use, software that people are asking you to make, as opposed to the software that is in the tickets, which I think is one of the biggest things people need to understand. A lot of times when they're asking you to make something, they are taking this huge idea in their head and they are compressing it down into language, the words, into English, and that's lossy. And then I am taking it out, I'm decompressing it from those words, and I'm interpreting it with all my biases. Then I make the software, it's not the same. It's not what they want, right? I thought that was the most fascinating gap in business. And I pretty much spent my career tackling that. So how do you prototype something very, very, very fast to see if it's actually has product market fit, to see if it's actually what the users want, what they need. And that's probably one of the things that I'm most passionate about.
I'm seeing on your LinkedIn that you studied human computer interaction.
I did, yeah.
Fascinating genre. I took a class in grad school on on that topic. Can you explain what that is for everyone?
Yeah, human computer interaction is, I like to say it as, it's how to write good software. It's how to write software that people actually need versus maybe the software they're asking you to write. And like I said, the reason I'm so passionate about that is because I was at, the government or in different places, and people would say, hey, make this. They might even break it out into like tickets or like a feature list. You make it exactly like that over the course of maybe months, years. And then they go, this isn't what I asked for. I'm like, weird. It does everything you asked. And I thought that was fascinating. So HCI is pretty much, how do you elicit the proper requirements? How do you prototype the application? What's the most efficient way to prototype the application to help the user even learn more about what they're trying to accomplish? And then how to build it. So, I mean, Carnegie Mellon was getting absolutely murdered in data structure courses for computer science, and then absolutely murdered in design exercises. And they ship out some pretty talented people. So I'm honored to be part of that.
Interesting. So coming from not that background, is that essentially human-centered or user-centered design for dev?
Yep, I would say it's the exact same thing. And
Okay.
honestly, the last 10 years, I mean, has been a renaissance for that because, everyone's using SAP and going, this sucks, I hate it. Why do I hate this so much? I work at a giant company. Why can't we make good software? And it's not that they're not investing in it. A lot of times they are investing in it. They're just not following what I would call the process.
Sure. Okay. So coming out of Carnegie Mellon, what did you do? Where'd you
Came out of
go?
Carnegie Mellon. I went to work for Dell. And I kind of did what was comfortable for me because prior to that, I was doing government consulting, hated it. But I graduated, I had a huge student debt hanging over my head. I just proposed to my wife, so I was getting married like weeks later, and I was like, I just need to get a good, like a well-paying job in an area that I'm comfortable in. So I went back to DC, and I was working at the Office of Management and Budget. And I was working on the application that aggregates the federal budget. My big joke there is like, I promise it works, because it does work. But yeah, it kind of reaches out into every single agency, which is a lot of agencies, make sure they fill in all the appropriate data, and then it generates the budget. That's what the application does. So that was what I went to right after grad school.
What was your next entrepreneurial venture?
My next entrepreneurial venture didn't come till Airspace.
Okay.
Till I was 30. I didn't strike out on my own until then. But I mean, I was always the guy with a side project. So when I was at Dell, weekends, I would always work on what I thought was like the cutting edge tech, because I was working on, old Rails, legacy Rails apps, and tech was exploding. So I was always kind of working on the next side thing that I thought maybe had legs. There was a time when I was at Deloitte where I tried to push forward. I had this really good idea. Our client was asking us for something, and I took it to a partner and I said, hey, they're asking us for this. Let's do it. And he was like, yeah, great. Draft our proposal. Let's make this happen. And then the person that was above me in my hierarchy shut it down and scolded me. How could you bring this to another partner? And it was that point I realized that politics also exists in business. So maybe that was entrepreneurial, trying to do my own thing inside of a company. But I realized that I'm pretty allergic to red tape.
Is that what prompted you to set out on your own, or tell us the founding story of Airspace?
The founding story of Airspace, I think, so I was like 29. And I think at that point in my life, which I've swung very much to the other side of this continuum, but I kind of viewed myself as this like mercenary, this guy who like knew a lot of tech, just give me a problem and I'll solve it. So at that point in my life, I was looking for the most complicated thing that you could possibly give me to kind of prove to myself that I could do it. But also I was looking for something that was more meaningful. I ended up writing a lot of different apps for the federal government, some of which just got killed with red tape. And I was like, just give me something that matters to the world that's really, really difficult. So I ended up just throwing my resume on Craigslist in areas that I wanted to live, which like my cover letter was like, I do not want to live in DC. I will not work for the government ever again. And I put my resume in the San Diego area and I think Huntington Beach. Interviewed a couple places and I met Nick. And like I said, he's the co-founder and CEO. And he had this idea to revolutionize time critical shipping, but he's telling me this is organ transplants, right? And I'm like, well, that must be good already. And he's like, no, about 1/3 don't make it.
Wow.
So when you get like a transplant or you're trying to get something that you need, like I said, you're waiting for a plane and a part is on the way. There's a 33% chance that it's just not going to happen on time. I mean, it's completely broken.
That's crazy.
Yeah. That being said, it's the 4-minute mile, right? I mean, it is a very hard thing to do, but people are just doing their best and not actually writing tech around it. Sorry, go ahead.
And what's your success rate now?
We're in the high 90s. And
Wow.
I have a whole speech about why on-time percentage isn't necessarily the optimal thing you want to like optimize for. But yeah, we have very much changed the industry. And now what I have to deal with is our competitors talking about, no, we have AI too. We also use artificial intelligence. And it's just like, they're just lying, you know?
So when you're saying on-time percentage is not the only important factor, is the other important factor the keeping the quality of the organ or whatever, keeping it refrigerated or however it needs to be stored throughout the supply chain?
So that's huge. But you can think of this in two different personas. So like one persona is it's something for surgery. Like at that point, when the organ is getting close, they're going to put that person to sleep and they're going to start prepping everything. And they're going to, wait for the organ to arrive right at the time when they open the person up and, try to give them a life-saving transplant. So that being as close to 100 as possible is what you want. That's how it should be. But if let's say you're a large aircraft manufacturer, you make airplanes. And if I get it there 6 hours earlier than somebody else, I save you $5 million because you get to your manufacturing line back up. You want my on-time percentage to be like 20%. You want me just like throwing Hail Marys, right? Like you want me to give the route that requires all green lights and everything to go perfectly. And if somehow we miss it, we'll fall back on a more conservative one. But yeah, I'll go to clients and they'll be like, well, your on-time percentage is, let's say it's 98 or something. And we'll talk about their use case. And I'm like, whoa, you actually want me to like throw Hail Marys and try to like minimize that travel time, which reduces on-time percentage. And they're like, oh, you're right. I didn't think about that. And so we actually use neural networks to figure that out. So for some clients, we drag that all the way to be 100. And then for some clients, we say, just throw that Hail Mary, try to catch all the green lights. And that lets us serve both groups to an optimum.
And are you across all modes of transportation to make this happen?
Yeah, so it's pretty much like a drive, fly, drive. Internationally, it might be more than that. But yeah, that's pretty much what we do. It's mostly a land move, an air move, and another land move. Yeah, we don't do things like ocean.
So Ryan, what was it that finally convinced you to come out to San Diego and give this thing a shot? I mean, when you were first speaking with Nick, did you know immediately, yep, this sounds like something I'll sign up for the next 8 years? Or did it take a while for you to come around to the idea?
So I was hoping this question would come up. I think it's important. So like I said, I was looking for like a really hard problem to solve. And there's lots of people that have problems out there. So with Nick, the thing that really stood out was, I was writing applications like when the iPhone came out, right? So, and I was like of drinking age, which is important in the story. So like I would be at a bar and people would be like, what do you do? And I'm like, I write software. And they're like, oh, can you make me an app? And I'm like, sure. And they're like, I want to cure cancer with the iPhone. And I'm like, okay, great. Like, are you an oncologist? And they're like, no. And I'm like, okay, well, good luck, man. Like, I mean, if you don't know anything about cancer, you're not going to do that, right? Well, Nick, like, I kind of joke that you need like 3 things to have a really good chance of succeeding. One, like you need the idea. Everyone's got the idea, right? That one's kind of, of course you need that. Number 2 is you need to be an expert in the space. And Nick was both. So Nick had been working logistics for like a decade and just knew all about the space. He was an expert in it. And he also had the idea. And then the third thing you need is the data to suggest that that idea will work. So important. So what Nick had was a list of he was working at he had run these courier companies, these companies that move organs and things for these big, large freight forwarders. And what he did was the smartest thing ever, which was he kept a log of all the mistakes that were being made by the airline, by the forwarder, by the courier, by the driver, by everybody, by the dispatcher. And they were also like coded. So I literally just sorted this by count, and we had the greatest jumping off point to ever start a freight forwarder. So we just said, if we write tech around all of these and make these things impossible with technology, we'll have the greatest freight forwarder ever.
Interesting. What was what is, I'm sure was and continues to be the greatest error or issue that occurs?
Oh man. So we wrote it, like I said, kind of top down. And the first one is the routing. So I mean, we can do kind of a trivia question. Is like, do you know how many ways there are to fly between San Francisco and Boston if you start at San Francisco and Boston with one hop?
No.
Right around 10,000. It's not that many, but it's still a lot. Now, if you take that problem and you extract it, make it a little bigger, and you're going from the San Francisco area, let's say a hospital, so you can now fly out of multiple airports, and then you're going to the Boston area, could land in multiple airports and drive. Any idea how many there are now?
100,000.
Yeah, so we didn't know either, and there's over 173 million.
Oh.
We're getting bigger, right?
Awesome.
Well, now go from the San Francisco area to Hamburg. You've got a prototype vaccine. It's got to go from San Francisco to Hamburg, Germany. It more than squares to near quadrillion possibilities.
Oh my gosh.
It's crazy, crazy. And these are problems that humans these people in the industry are amazing and they're so good, but you need machines to help you with these things. Mm-hmm. So like just the other day, we decided to fly around the other way around the planet to make a delivery happen. And you never would think about that unless the machine gave you a risk prediction on that route, which is what we do. So the misrouting, a lot of times customers would think that they're getting good routing and people would think they're getting the best routing, but they just can't find that tiny needle in the haystack. It's impossible. So that was really one of the first ones. Another one is misdispatching. So we use, like I said, neural nets that train that pass values to other neural nets to figure out what's the best driver. So if you get the routing right and you get the dispatch right, and then you have a machine that can monitor these things, you're just taking out the human error. And that's what we do. Yeah. And I say all of that with the absolute most respect for the people that are doing it. We'd be nothing without our people that are doing it. We actually train our neural nets on our people's behavior to help them. So the tech is truly nothing. The neural nets are nothing without our people.
Incredible. What is the most frequent item that you are helping to transport?
It's a great question.
Facilitating transport.
I should probably know that. We do a ton of blood. We do a ton of tissue. We do a lot of, like I said, like semiconductor industrials work. So it's really, we try to keep that pretty spread out. We don't want too much density in any specific area. Kind of insulates us from changes. But we do, like I said, lots of parts for aircraft, helicopter blades, all kinds of stuff.
Okay. So Ryan, I'd love to hear what it was like actually starting this business when it sounds like it was mainly Nick's initial idea and Nick's baby. How was that coming in as the technical co-founder, and what has that experience been like? What have you gained or learned? And I should ask, were you CTO from the start, or did you kind of mold? Okay, you are.
Yep.
Just about your journey within Airspace.
Yeah, so when I met Nick, I remember we always joke about this. Like I asked him, I'm like, hey, what's your software stack? And he goes, what do you mean? And I was like, oh man, there's nothing. There's nothing. Okay. So that's an awesome opportunity. Let's do this the right way from the beginning. That's like so exciting. And like I said, I knew the fastest way to fail would be just getting on my computer and start typing, right? It's the fastest way to fail. So I figured out, all right, well, how can we prototype this quickly? How do we get in front of customers? How do we get this in front of people to see if this is actually something that they need? And, Nick's idea, it was even different from his initial idea, right? Things like auto routing is something that has literally changed the industry. and that wasn't even part of the requirements, right? So you elicit these things from your users by asking the right questions, prototyping in a meaningful way. So I never felt like, oh, I was just the tech guy. Me and Nick are just good bros and like friends, and I'm still happy to be working with them 8 years later.
What do you mean by auto routing?
So you just kind of put in the origin, put in the destination, and the
Mhm.
machine actually tells you
Sure.
in about a second how the route should, or how it should be routed, where it's going to go, the travel path. Everybody else aside from Airspace does that manually by hand. And that's because we have a patent on it, and it's also egregiously difficult to code.
So your customers, do they use a platform, or do they use your sales team or your account managers who are then using your platform?
They use our platform. So almost all of them. Some of them use their own platform, which will API into us, but almost all of them use our software.
You have,
It's like
yeah, okay.
90%, yeah.
And who are your few largest client profiles? Are you contracting with governments? Is it all like private corps?
Yeah, that I actually don't know which ones I can list. I don't know which agreements we've signed. Said we can do the, we can say that. I can get back to you, or if you have Nick on, we can prep him with that question.
Just fine. No worries.
Yeah, I mean, we're B2B, so
Yeah.
we have a variety of agreements with customers. I just don't want to say the wrong name.
As you guys have built this business over the last 8 years, what are some of the major mistakes that you guys have made that you've learned from?
This is a great question. I'll go one technical and one non-technical. From a technical side, very early on, I tried to like optimize this thing so it would scale forever. That was a really dumb idea. Like, you really just want, Martin Fowler is just a genius. And it was like months after that, I read a post by him that said, always megalith first, which is build one single application before you know what parts to pull out. So made a mistake there. Cost us a little bit of time. All good. The other one is that I think early on in my career, I assumed everybody thought just like me. Everyone's going to come in and, work as hard as possible. They're going to have the best intentions. They are passionate about the mission, and that's just not true. So you need a really, really robust interview process to screen for the greatest people. That's all a company is, right? It's just the best possible people. My people are better than your people. I'm going to win, right? That's how it goes. And if you let the wrong people in, you can really create a culture that you do not want.
How do you do that?
Making hard decisions and managing out people that might be doing great work, but are not the best people.
How do you pick the right people through the interview process?
I think interviewing is a skill. Every now and then people will just sign up and say, oh yeah, I'll be on the interview panel. I'm just gonna go ask them questions about them. No, it's not how you do it. Like, you need a really structured approach to an interview. When you have a group of people, who's going to focus on what are they screening for? And if not everyone is like pounding the table for this person at the end, then don't do it. So I'd recommend the book Who. Is very good, and it advocates for very, very, very stringent interview processes, and I think that's super important. So to get a job in aerospace engineering, I mean, it's a phone call with the recruiter, then it's likely a phone call with me. Then we think, okay, this is like not a brilliant jerk. They've got a good personality. They've got a good background. That's after the resume screening. Then we'll give them a homework assignment before they even come in. We'll then bring them in. We'll give them an architecture review. We'll give them an algorithm review. We'll pair a program with them. That's a whole day. Sometimes we'll bring them back, and that's kind of it. But we interviewed for one position. We interviewed 140 people face to face.
Oh my God!
Wow, 140 face to face.
How do you handle that time suck?
It's hard. Yeah, it stinks. But like, luckily at that point, we weren't in a place where I needed to hire like 100 people. Thank God. But I would rather grow slow than hire the wrong people. I think it's really, really, really important.
And alternatively to what you were saying to start this question, Ryan, if you have someone, how do you determine when you have someone on the team who may check a lot of boxes, but not enough to keep around? How do you make that determination internally?
I think for the most part, there's like there's kind of, I don't know if it's a joke, but it's this aphorism or an axiom there's two types of behavior, right? There's your personal behavior, right? Your performance. And then the other is like the behavior that affects others. And it just doesn't matter how good your personal performance is if you're bringing other people down. So we let people go that are doing that. And I think because of that, we have a culture that has been able to withstand some of the craziness of the last few years, us all being trapped in our homes and all that stuff, and these SVB and like all this craziness that's been going on. When you have the right people, you can, get through anything.
Yes, totally agree. Since you mentioned it, hopefully Airspace has not been affected by any of the crazy banking stuff.
We're good. Thank goodness.
Good deal.
Yeah.
So
Right.
Ryan, outside of work, starting a business of this nature, I can imagine would be the tallest of tasks. How over the last 8 years have you stayed sane? Like how do you ground yourself, and how do you separate out business from personal life?
Man, well, when I started Airspace, I didn't have any kids, which maybe that might have been the only reason I could do it at the time, because I could work so much. But now I've got the best 4-year-old in the world. I've got twin boys that are 8 months, a little dog, and an amazing wife. So they very much demand your full attention when you're with them, So I do have to be I have to really, really make the most of all my time. So when I'm at work, I'm really trying to make it all work. When I'm at home, I'm making sure I'm in full dad mode, and I get up before everybody else and I work out to be as sane as possible. And that's helped. And man, like I have been to the edge. Like I have been to the edge of burnout.
Mm-hmm.
It is dark and full of terrors.
Yeah.
It is one of the most important things to prevent. So I've gotten a lot better at doing that. And, reading books on it, talking to people about it, being honest with the fact that like, you're not feeling your best right now, and working out are like the best ways that I found to deal with that.
How does Airspace do that as a company? Like, how do you establish a culture to help people avoid burning out?
I think it starts at the top. So Nick has looked at me over the course of 8 years multiple times and was like, dude, get out of here. You need a vacation. And like, he actually booked me a ticket. I'd never been to Hawaii. He actually booked me to Hawaii, and me and my wife went to Hawaii. This is years ago. And I needed it. He was right. I was not the best version of myself. I was probably bringing other people down, and he got me out of here for a week, and I felt a lot better when I came back. And I'm constantly checking in with our VP of engineering, who's just an awesome guy and will oftentimes overwork himself. And I'm like, hey man, like when was last vacation? Like, how you feeling? And, hey, don't listen to a book on like, optimizing our software delivery speed while you're working out. Just listen to music. And I think just acknowledging that what we do every day is a lethal dose of stress for a lot of people. Mm-hmm. And that when they're not feeling their best, it's not about them, and other people would be much worse off. I think that's important. So we try to regularly message that as much as possible. Yeah. Got to take care of yourself.
So Ryan, what is next for Airspace? What's on the horizon? Where are you all trying to go with the company?
I'm very proud of where we're at. If you are moving a time critical parcel in the United States, it's a no-brainer to use Airspace. I mean, it is the safest, it is the fastest, it is, you are actively putting your customers or yourself at risk if you choose a different provider. I feel very proud of that. Internationally, we've got more tech to write. We've got more stuff to do. So there's a lot more laws over there. There's customs, there's crazy business hours. If it is a holiday in Italy, then you need to avoid Rome, and like getting the real world, which is so big and so diverse, into an application that can make intelligent decisions on it has been so hard. But we've made such huge strides, and I'm looking forward to all the things that we continue to build. We've got the best team of people that are doing that. And
I'm sure that's been an incredible learning experience for you and your team, just learning about all of these different international dynamics that you've probably never heard of or considered previously.
Right. Yeah. And like the one thing that I've learned is like, you just can't try to do that alone. Like under no circumstance am I the best person to figure out how to optimize the supply chain of Europe. I'm just not. So we ended up reaching through our networks and finding the two best guys to run that operation. And they're absolutely great. One's in Germany, the other one's in Sweden. And they, just get it. And they're building things that the customers need. And they're doing the same thing over there that we've done here.
Awesome.
I know we're kind of running low on time. Any last nuggets of wisdom you'd like to share with our listeners?
I think my last nugget is, so I kind of joke that I'm really bad at weddings because like the way people bond is like, oh man, Monday, hate my job. How about you, man? I'm like, I actually like love my job. Like, I can't wait to go to work on Monday. And, no one wants to hear that. Right.
No.
But I'm just always amazed that like I said in the beginning, there's so many ways to like work and make a living. Why do one that you absolutely hate? So Ira is one of our investors, and he says he's a VC and is head of Double Bottom Line. Great company, great guy. And he says, we fund missionaries, not mercenaries. And I've kind of joked that I swung all the way on the other side of that pendulum. Like I am incapable of waking up and doing something that I don't care. And I think everyone should just keep looking until they find that. Do consulting, they'll put you on a dozen projects that you hate. And then eventually you'll find something that you're passionate about.
That's good advice. Well, with your 3 kids and crazy busy schedule, we don't want to take up too much more of your time. But thanks so much. This was insightful, and we appreciate you spending some time with us this afternoon.
Hey, the pleasure was all mine. I'm honored to be on a CEO podcast as a CPO.
No, really appreciate it, Ryan. It was a fun episode.
Nice. I'm glad to hear that.
Everybody got a dream, let me show you all love. From an idea, working it into a startup. This the show that you need, what more could you ask for? Never know who become the CEO next door. Tune in, every episode insightful. The type of vibe you will want to subscribe to. Let's go. Hey.